It can only be attributable to human error.
You're entering paranormal.
He meddled in things that you people want. He meddled in things. He meddled in
Where will we go next? It's a phantom from another time.
No one, Mr. Mulder.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
That is one big pile of shit.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Cryptid Campfire. Today I am joined by Emily of the Forest Fleur. How you doing today, Emily?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. And so your website, theforestfleur.com, it contains eyewitness accounts, interviews with Bigfoot researchers, well-written articles, wonderfully made products, as well as a podcast. That is quite a bit.
It is. We have quite a bit of information on our site, and actually the inspiration for starting the business was kind of through a few different things, but mainly a school project that I did. During my class, we were asked to create a business model. I went to school for product development. So our assignment was to create a business model where you would have, some kind of business related to a popular topic or a niche market. So I thought to myself, wouldn't it be so fun if there was a business out there that had Bigfoot research combined with products? I thought it would be a great place for people to come and explore theories, share information with each other, and then also take home a souvenir. So that's how the whole business started. My professor loved my project so much. He said, you should do this for real. And it was kind of the business and the resource that I felt was missing from the Bigfoot community. There really wasn't a place where you could go and learn about different information through so many avenues, and then also be able to take home that souvenir. So it's been a lot of fun running the business, and it's really grown into such a passion of mine. So it's really a wonderful thing.
How many years have you been running this business?
I started around 2016. Throughout the past year, it's really taken off more than I thought it would, just because I've been able to put more time into it after graduating college. Now I have a full-time job, and on the side I do this. So I've been able to put a lot more time and effort into it, and I've met up with some incredible researchers. And although this pandemic has caused a lot of problems for many people, it has given me the opportunity to interview such incredible researchers and learn so much more about this topic, and then pass that on to my followers as well. Because the way I like to think of it is that I'm learning along with the people that follow my research. I don't claim to be an expert on Bigfoot whatsoever. I could tell you a thing or two, but I'm learning just as much as they are. So when I bring a different guest onto my podcast, or do a different interview with somebody, or do research for my site, I'm excited to learn with everybody else. That's really what I love about the Bigfoot community. It's so tight-knit, and everybody gets to share different theories.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, we're talking about really big guests on your show. I mean, Dr. Jeff Meldrum,
Yup.
Seth Breedlove, and Cliff Barrickman, among just three of like some of the big heavy hitters on there. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Thank you. It's definitely been an honor speaking with all of them. And it's funny because even though I speak to researchers that are well known by the Bigfoot community, I also speak to people that are just your average researcher out in the field that have not been on a TV show, that have not had their work published. And I learn just as much from those researchers as I do from people like Cliff Barrickman or Bobo Fay. So it's really been an amazing experience, because I think that no matter how big you are in the scope of things in the Bigfoot community, I think everybody has a little something to offer. I know that some researchers give me theories that I never even myself. And then when I speak to other researchers in later episodes, I recall the theories that I learned from other people, and it actually helps me to formulate my own opinions on the subject. So it's been really rewarding to be able to speak to so many different people of so many different levels of this community. Dr. Meldrum was an incredible guest to have on. He explained the whole science of the Bigfoot footprints and the evidence that researchers are finding. And then one of my favorite researchers, Connor Anderson, he's a repeat guest on the show. And he just started working at the North American Bigfoot Center. So he's done a lot of research, and he's been giving me a lot of insight into what they're doing over there. And actually, just today, I spoke with Shane Corson from the Olympic Project, and that episode's going to go up tomorrow. He shared a couple of really great findings with me. So I'm excited to share that with my listeners as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How did you get into Bigfoot? I know that you're into all different cryptids, but do you have a favorite cryptid?
Bigfoot, that's the one. Is it safe to say yours is the same?
Yes, it is safe to say.
So, yeah, I couldn't really tell you the first time I heard about Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or anything like that. It just really feels like I just grew up knowing about them. I don't know, I grew up in that prime time of cable TV, Monster Quest was just coming out, so
Yeah.
that all kind of just formed, Finding Bigfoot came out a few years after that, and just the perfect mix of strange stuff happening. Of course, the internet helped a lot, as well as finding information online, which I feel like has gotten better over time. Finding legitimate information through sites like yours and others. So yeah, I just kind of always was interested, and then I created the podcast to justify my interest in it. So
Yeah, I think
so
it's a really great idea. And I love your podcast because people that are interested in all different creatures can come to you for information, which I think is really cool. It's not just focused on one. You could learn so many different things about all different creatures.
yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff out there, and yeah, because there's a lot of competition with like Bigfoot podcasts and even just cryptid podcasts in general. But the biggest thing I see, a little gap in the market, if you will, is just a podcast that covers just about anything and everything under the sun. So that's where we fit in.
Yeah. Well, I definitely applaud you for that. That's tough to cover all those bases, but I think it's really exciting to explore all the mysteries in the world.
Oh, for sure. And so, how did you get into Bigfoot? As you said, you created a business model while you were in school.
Mhm.
So, was this always the game plan? I'm gonna grow up and start a Bigfoot company?
Definitely not. The first time that I had heard of Bigfoot is through shows like Monster Quest. My mom would always watch them with me. My grandfather was a big believer, and when he passed away, my mom would watch these TV shows with me as a way to bond and think of her father. So I was always intrigued by the idea of Bigfoot. But then I was in my basement looking for a DVD to watch one night. I was really bored. I was probably in middle school. And I opened up the cabinet and I found this DVD pack of all kinds of horror movies and paranormal movies and Twilight Zone type series. And it was just like a whole mix of things, probably a little DVD set you could buy in like an off brand store. And so I pulled one out and it said Legend of Bigfoot by Ivan Marks. So I popped it into my DVD player and I started watching. And The Legend of Bigfoot by Ivan Marks is this old, crackly Bigfoot film by this very eccentric researcher where he's going out and trying to collect evidence and documenting his journey to finding Bigfoot. I was just so taken back by the documentary. I wasn't really convinced by the footage he had in there, but I just thought it was such an exciting thing. And this was the first time I actually saw one person dedicating their entire life to looking into this creature. So I got very excited by the documentary. It was like a little bit creepy and eerie. They had some really creepy music in the background, and I feel like stuff like that just excites me. So I started getting more interested in the topic, and then as I went through high school, I took a mystery supernatural class where we learned about Bigfoot and aliens and all different kinds of cryptids, which was really amazing. And eventually, my family and I wanted to take a trip. So we decided to go up to Lake George. And while we were there, we wanted to explore a nearby town called Whitehall, New York. And Whitehall is known for Bigfoot sightings. They actually have a Bigfoot statue in the center of their town. So we ended up going there and we stumbled into the Skeensboro Museum. We met with this amazing older gentleman who he relayed all these stories. There's a famous golf course sighting. There's a sighting by police officers in Whitehall. And so he took us through each of those sightings, gave us all the details. And then he pulled out this old wrinkly map and he traced his finger down the map and he showed me the suspected Bigfoot migration route from Vermont down into New York. And it was such an incredible experience. It was just mind blowing. Here I am in this little town, population of maybe under 1,000. There's no cell phone service. There's woods all around. And this man is giving me, these detailed accounts of these creatures that are being seen in this town. So after that trip, I really started getting interested in the subject to a level where I was starting to dedicate some serious time to it. Finding Bigfoot later came on, and it would be a family event. We would get the popcorn, we would all sit together and watch it. And then eventually, once I got up to college, I started writing all of my research papers on Bigfoot. And then after that project that I did, started the business. It started out very small. I was just writing blog posts for friends and family. And eventually it grew into what it is today. And now I consider Bigfoot my whole life. It's given me a purpose in life. It's a piece of mystery. It's the world's greatest mystery that I am on a mission to not so much solve, but bring awareness to. I want to make sure that these creatures are known about and protected, because I think that, as we as humans expand on this earth, I really want to make sure that we do leave a space for the original dwellers, which are Bigfoots.
Wow. And as you mentioned, you want people to walk away with a souvenir from this experience you've created. And in fact, the first time I met you, which was at the Oregon Bigfoot Festival last year, I did indeed walk away with a little souvenir, which I still use to this day. These wonderful woodcut coasters with Bigfoot on them. And they're phenomenal. Honestly, they really are. Like, they're still holding up after all this time. And we use them
Good.
whenever.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, we use them whenever we record the podcast. I should be using it right now, actually. Uh, but yeah. So, how did you? Because I see that your products come from Australia.
Yes, we have all different products, and each product has an eco-conscious element to it. So it's really important to me to be conscious of these creatures' environment, to protect it. And although a 100% sustainable business is not really that realistic, I like to include an eco-friendly element in each of my products. So all of our wood products, in terms of coasters, ornaments, and magnets, come from Australia. We have an excellent product partner there. He is such a great guy, and he actually knows people who have seen the Yowie in Australia, which is really interesting. It's their version of a Bigfoot. So he produces all of our wood products, and he uses already fallen trees to make sure that he's not damaging any environment. Over there. So he takes already fallen invasive species of trees, cuts them up. They smell incredible. Every time I get a shipment, I open the box and I just sit there for a good minute smelling them because they have the best smell to them. So it's really they're probably my favorite part of the product line. And then we've actually expanded to all different artisans all over the country and all over the world who create our products. So I have people in Illinois, people in Vermont that create things for us, India. So we have all kinds of craftsmen that work on our products, and I make sure that I know exactly who they are. We establish relationships with one another, and they are pretty much just as passionate about this as I am. Maybe they don't, research or believe in Bigfoot, but they are so excited to get behind such a unique product. So they are the best product partners, and it's so much fun to create these lines. Our most recent line of product, we did kind of a little adventure accessory pack. So we have a picnic blanket, a cutting board in the shape of Bigfoot's foot. We have a water bottle and a bottle opener. So we have pretty much everything to bring along on an expedition and have a picnic worthy of a Squatch joining.
Wow, that's sick.
It's a lot of fun. It really is.
Yeah. I So what was the highlight of that Oregon Bigfoot Fest that we were both at?
Oh my gosh, that was just an amazing experience. It's funny, I went there and a lot of people had told me, oh, you're going to sell so much of your product. Make sure you bring a lot along with you, bring high quantities of things. I didn't end up selling as much as I thought, which was fine because I really wasn't there to make money. I was there to learn about Bigfoot.
Sure.
But I thought it was funny because a couple days after the festival, I brought my leftover product to Cliff Barrickman, who had just started the North American Bigfoot Center in Boring, Oregon. And I started selling some of my products to him. So I told him that whatever I had left over from the festival, I would offer up to him and see if he wanted to take some inventory in for the museum. So the day that I went to go show him the leftover product, we were asking him where we might be able to find some evidence or do some field work. And he pointed me to the Clackamas River area. And it was just, it was the most remote area I have ever been to. It was, I just can't even describe it. To people who live on the East Coast, you haven't seen anything until you visit the West Coast. And I'm an East Coast girl. I love the East Coast. It's where I'm born and raised, and I think I'll probably stay there. But the West Coast is definitely a place I want to venture to more often. It really is just like a giant version of where I am. So Cliff had explained to us how to get there, and Austin's my boyfriend who runs the business with me. We looked at Cliff and Cliff goes, oh, just use your map to get there. And we looked at him and we said, Cliff, we're millennials. We do not have a map. We don't carry maps around. We were cracking up. So he ended up gifting us his personal expedition map, which was so incredible. It was just amazing to walk through the Clackamas River region looking for Bigfoot, holding Cliff Barrickman's personal expedition map in my hands. It was just such a unique experience. And along with that, meeting so many different people at the festival who believe in the same thing that I do and want to learn more. It's just an amazing feeling to be surrounded by people who are all trying to solve the same mystery and who don't think you're crazy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think for me it was seeing Bigfoot tracks for the first time for casts,
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big foot. I mean, that's why they call it Bigfoot, but I just couldn't believe it, you hear all these numbers, 18 inches, 22 inches, and it's all just kind of like numbers in your head, and then you see it and you're like, whoa, that's a big foot.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, Cliff had sent me some footprint casts from the Patterson-Gimlin site about 2 weeks after the Patterson-Gimlin film was shot on October 20th, 1967. Around 2 weeks after that, a man named Bob Titmus went, and he actually cast a ton of, I think it was over a dozen footprints from the area.
Yeah.
And Cliff had given me a couple generations down copies, and when I received these in the mail, I just could not believe the sheer size of them. And after I received them, I started doing more research on the footprints. And what I find so interesting is that the anatomy of these prints is just unlike any human, and it really can't be recreated with a piece of wood or cardboard or whatever. There's actually a 21-degree difference between Bigfoot's back leg bending and a human's, which is kind of the line that draws, the two apart. So when a human walks, they lift their foot 52 degrees off of the ground, whereas a Bigfoot lifts theirs 73 degrees. So it kind of looks like their foot is it kind of looks like their leg is bending at a right angle, which is why we see mid-tarsal breaks in these footprints, which distinguish them from human, which I just think is so interesting that we can actually prove these creatures' existence just by the footprints we find.
Right. And I don't think a lot of people are even aware of that. What you just described and everything, a lot of people, especially here in Los Angeles where no one believes in Bigfoot, when I tell people I believe in Bigfoot and I say, oh, the casts are definitely like proof that they exist, they're like, well, can't you just fake a cast? And it's like, clearly you've never looked into the topic, so
It's true. And if you speak to researchers like Dr. Meldrum, they'll explain to you the difference in anatomy. A human has a longitudinal arch, which means the entire foot is incorporated into the lever that kind of propels it off the ground. And with a Bigfoot, they have a mid-tarsal break, which causes weight to transfer from the rear to the forefront. And actually, this anatomy is most common in apes, which is very interesting because many eyewitnesses describe Bigfoot as looking like an ape. So I think that it's definitely something people underestimate. And when they see these footprints, they just think, oh, this is totally made up and a hoax. But like you said, you can't just replicate it easily.
Oh, yeah. Sorry to change topics real quick, because
Yeah,
I have a feeling this entire podcast is going to be about Bigfoot, which I'm okay with. But
anything you want to ask.
Because this is Cryptid Campfire, what is your favorite non-Bigfoot cryptid?
Ooh, that's an awesome question. Well, I think, man, that's a tough one. I really like the Mothman. The Mothman Prophecy is one of my favorite movies, and I think it's just really interesting because it is such a creepy thing to think about, like a giant flying alien thing that looks like a moth. I don't even know. It creeps me out. And to think that there were so many coincidences between the witnesses, that's what intrigues me the most. I know that a lot of people say that the more they researched it, the more it would come after them, which is really creepy. And I just wonder about that. I've heard different things about it being an alien or something from a different dimension. So I think that one intrigues me a lot. But I think the one that I'm most drawn to is definitely the Loch Ness Monster, only because there's a little more evidence on that. When I'm looking into these type of creatures, I want to know that there was a creature in history that existed that shares similar characteristics. So in the case of Bigfoot, you have Gigantopithecus that once existed, which is a giant Asian ape, and then you have Paranthropus, which is a hominin from a branch of early human. In the case of the Loch Ness Monster, there are other types of like old dinosaurs that resemble the Loch Ness Monster that I'm not sure of the exact ones because I don't typically research that topic, but I do know that the light research that I've done on it, I've found like other dinosaurs that were proven to exist in history that resemble the Loch Ness Monster. So to me, that cryptid is definitely more plausible than the others, only because we have evidence that something similar existed. But in terms of like creepy, awesome, like love watching documentaries on it, definitely the Mothman.
Sick. Right on.
What
Yeah,
about you? You said Bigfoot. What about your
I
non-Bigfoot
know. And I
favorite?
was just yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Because the reason why Bigfoot's my favorite, is because I think it is most likely to exist. And I don't know, Mothman kind of freaks me out because that's more on the paranormal side for me, and I just,
Yes.
I'm not about that. Oh, I'm gonna go look for Mothman, and then Mothman follows you home type of thing. Like, no, I don't want that. Uh,
And when
um,
Mothman follows you home, he follows you home forever.
yeah, right. Oh, Champ. I don't know why I took so long to say that. I love Champ. Uh, Probably for a lot of the same reasons you like the Loch Ness Monster, but for me, Maybe it's because Champ's on American soil. I don't know. I have a thing for America. So, but I've also talked to Scott Martis and Katie Elizabeth about the topic as well. Those are, if you don't know, researchers of Champ, and uh, very enlightening to hear what they have to say. Very scientific methods that they've taken to approach the topic, which you don't really hear a whole lot about with other cryptids
Right.
besides Bigfoot. So I don't know. I just think it's interesting, and I think it might be out there for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. Like I said, I tend to just go off the fact that there were similar creatures that once existed, and just knowing what I know about Bigfoot and how similar it is to beings that were already on Earth. I couldn't imagine Champ or Loch Ness just being, a figment of people's imagination.
Sure. Let me ask you this. Because I'm reading currently Ivan Sanderson's The Abominable Snowman. Uh,
Mm.
it's my first time reading it, and honestly, pretty dang good. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a big fan of Ivan Sanderson's style, so. But he brings up this theory that Sasquatch hibernates during the winter.
Hmm.
What do you think about that? I've discussed with Alexander Pedikov a little bit about this, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, I think that Ivan Sanderson did remarkable work, and he was definitely a pioneering researcher in this field. He did a lot of research on this topic. So I think that it's definitely a valid theory. And what I've been starting to research into for my next podcast episode is Bigfoots and migration. So
Mm,
going along with your question, do they hibernate? I think that would tie into, do they migrate? There is evidence that these creatures do not stay in the same area for ever. There will be repeated activity a lot of the times in the same area in the same time of year. But then after that time of year is over, the activity dwindles down. So I think that's a great question. And I've also done a lot of research on these creatures living underground. There was a
mm,
civilization in Turkey called the Cappadocians, and these people housed over 2,000 members of society and livestock all underground in cave systems. So I think that if humans could have done it back in the BC times, I'm sure that Bigfoot could live underground now. Another supporting story to that theory is I interviewed a man named Dwayne Osee a few weeks back, and he is the star of Netflix's Win the Wilderness TV series. It's a reality show. So him and his wife, he was the first Alaskan homesteader. The last Alaskan homesteader. My apologies. And he was the last person to establish a home on a rural mountain in Alaska. His neighbors were miles and miles away, and he started making contact with Bigfoots. And so
mm,
what happened was he had a trap that he set to catch dinner, and he noticed that the trap was gone and there was a blood trail. So he followed the blood trail because he figured the animal got snagged and somehow got the trap loose and is carrying the trap off, and he wanted to make sure the animal wasn't suffering. So he's following this blood trail and trying to find the trap and the animal. And the animal seemed to have jumped into this sinkhole. In Alaska, there's a lot of different sinkholes that occur during certain times of the year, I believe.
mm.
So he jumps down into this sinkhole, and it's underground. It's basically all the trees and the ground is just caving in and towards the middle, and it makes this cave. So he goes down into this sinkhole, and he sees a bed woven out of branches, like completely woven, like as if a human could do it. But yet his neighbors were miles away. There was nobody that would have been able to get there. You can't even get to this mountain other than by plane. So if anyone were there, he would have heard them coming in. So
Yeah.
he sees this pile of mushrooms underground and this woven bed. And Dwayne believes that these creatures do hibernate similar to bears, because he said bears do the same thing. They go into these sinkholes. And he believes that the pile of mushrooms, which are edible, and the woven bed, he said it was about the size of a queen mattress. He thinks that these creatures do hibernate in these sinkholes in Alaska. Now, that was very intriguing to me because there are not sinkholes all over the country. I mean, they're only in certain areas. So, what I'm wondering now is okay, maybe Bigfoots hibernate in Alaska in the sinkholes, but where do they hibernate in upstate New York or Pennsylvania? Do they dig holes in the ground and cover it with brush so that nobody could even see it? Do they make tree structures and hide in there? I tend to believe, and I don't have much evidence backing this up, I'm just going off of the Cappadocians and the story that Dwayne told me and other stories I've heard in the Bigfoot field. I do believe that they have structures underground, but I don't think they necessarily hibernate like a bear where they would eat a bunch of food and then just like sleep most of the winter away. I do think that they're still pretty active. Which is why a lot of people see white Bigfoots in the winter. A lot of people do see Bigfoots in the snow, and there's a lot of video evidence as well. So I think they definitely lay lower during the winter, but I don't think that they're as inactive as, say, a bear.
Yeah, sure. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's something that I've been exploring a lot, and I'm very curious about it because ultimately we want to figure out these creatures' behavior. We want to know why they do certain things, what they do, and when we figure that out, we can figure out how intelligent they are, which I believe their intelligence exceeds our own species, to be honest with you.
Let's put a pin in that, because we'll get there in just a second, because I do want to ask, I did want to propose this, because I don't know how far south those sinkholes in Alaska travel down, but I know Oregon and Washington are, or at least used to be, extremely volcanic areas, and so you have a lot of, what do they call them? Volcanic tubes, I guess you would call them, that are subterranean. And so it's very possible. In fact, a lot of the rivers up there, goodness, I'm blanking on all the names, but they're actually taking the place of these volcanic tubes, and so that's where the rivers flow through nowadays. Is
Wow.
Yeah, where these huge volcanoes exploded and just the lava was traveling through. It's pretty sick.
Oh
So,
yeah. I don't doubt that at all. I mean, if there's a passageway there and you're an opportunist animal, why not?
mm-hmm, exactly. So, who's to say that in the Pacific Northwest they're not using these volcanic tubes underground to travel?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And even on the East Coast, there are a lot of cave systems. There's some caves that you could actually go and visit, and they take you on a little boat underneath and stuff. But there are unexplored caves too. So I wonder if they're living underground. My whole theory is they are so large and they're dark in color, right? They stand out. How are we not seeing them? If there are a lot of them, you know, how do we not see them more often? I think they've got to be living underground. That's just my theory. And again, I don't have much evidence to back it up. I think the evidence to back it up is the absence of evidence, like maybe that's why we don't find much is because they live underground. Maybe if we start digging, we'll find something.
What do you think about Bigfoot climbing trees?
That's a really interesting question, and I've been asked this a few times. I I think it's definitely possible. Now, there is a section of Bigfoot believers that do believe that Bigfoot is paranormal, that maybe it's an alien or some kind of shape-shifting interdimensional being. I don't tend to believe that. I just haven't seen any evidence of it. And a lot of these people make the argument, and again, I respect these people's theories and opinions. I just haven't seen evidence myself. So until I do, I kind of stay away from that theory. But these people put up the argument that Bigfoot footprints, we often find them in the mud, and then all of a sudden, step, 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 they stop. And all of a sudden the footprint trail ends, and people say, well, how does that make sense if there's still more mud after that and there's still more places to make an impression? How could the footprints just stop and vanish in the middle of a track line.
Mm.
My theory is that these creatures may be jumping up into the trees, and that's why the footprints stop. There have been a lot of sightings of these creatures in trees. Now, I'm not talking about all the way at the top of the branches like an eagle would make a nest up there, but I think on the lower branches, there have been a lot of sightings of these things. And I think that if a creature, like say a bear, right? A bear doesn't spend most of its time in the trees, but when it's trying to get away from something or it's trying to find something or chase something, sometimes it'll go up in the tree. And if Bigfoot is intelligent, if their intelligence matches human beings, I know that a lot of survivalists, like Bear Grylls, for instance, will actually climb up a tree to get a vantage point of
Mm.
the terrain and see where they're going. So if these creatures do have a culture and they are intelligent enough to migrate and they're trying to figure out where to go next, I don't see why they couldn't jump up in a tree. That would explain the footprint trails ending, and that would explain a lot of sightings of them in trees. And also, a lot of people believe they are part ape. So if that is true, they would definitely climb trees. And also, early humans, a lot of early human species, which I believe Bigfoot is more on the human side, a lot of early human species climbed trees and also walked on two legs. So there is evidence in history that creatures similar to Bigfoot did climb trees. So I think it's definitely part of their behavior.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the paranormal aspect of it. Uh, because I don't really tend to believe that either. I think Bigfoot is just an undiscovered ape species.
Mm-hmm.
But the most common things, obviously, tracks disappearing, which them jumping into trees is not something I even thought about. In addition, you have, what is it? They seem to just disappear out of thin air, which, if you know Paul Graves, I heard him talking on Bigfoot and Beyond about that specific thing, which is, there's a lot of shrubs or a lot of foliage around, and if a Bigfoot just decides to fall on its stomach, if you will, and crawl away, I mean, it looks like it vanishes. I mean, how long does it take to hit the ground? It doesn't take long. And then on top of that is, what is it? Bigfoot being bulletproof. It's like, I don't know, dude. Like, bears, I feel like would be a comparable example,
Yeah.
There's a reason why park rangers offer bear repellent instead of suggesting you trying to stop it with a gun. Right? It's like,
Yeah.
might be a little hard because
Right.
it's bigger and it probably could take a little bit more than you can. So,
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great point. And I think there's just so much more evidence to suggest that it is a physical animal than a supernatural animal. I mean, also think about it this way. You're out in the woods, right? You're enjoying a hunt or a hike or you're fishing or something. And all of a sudden, this 8 to 10 foot tall, hairy, ginormous creature comes up to you. Are you really going to sit there staring at it with a cool head, absorbing every detail and documenting exactly when it showed up and exactly when it goes away? I think when people say it vanishes, I think what they're remembering is that they blinked and it was gone. And if you're an animal that's very stealthy in the woods, I think it is possible to escape within a blink. Within the blink of an eye. I think it is possible. They could hide behind a tree. They could jump up into a tree. And these creatures are very powerful. They are very stealthy. And think about it. They've been on this earth, I believe, longer than our species has. They've been in this area longer than we have, I believe. And they're experts at their environment. So I think it would be very easy for them to quote unquote vanish before your eyes in a more physical way.
yeah. Um, so let's get into that. You think they're not only smarter than us, but have been around longer than us.
Yes. I believe that Bigfoot is a paranthropus species. So when you look at the family tree of humans, you can just Google it online. And, I started out with very basic research of human evolution. I looked at Australopithecines, I looked at Paranthropus, and then I looked at the Homo species. So on our family tree, there are 3 different branches of these creatures, which are called hominins. And a hominin is kind of to put it basically, it's kind of a mixture between an ape and a human. It's kind of when apes started forming into humans. So Australopithecines were a little more human-like. Paranthropus was a little more ape-like, and then Homo is the species that we evolved from. So we evolved from Homo erectus, but there were other Homo species as well, like Neanderthals and other species, Floresiensis, the list goes on. So Paranthropus was a kind of human, kind of ape species. They were pretty intelligent. But the reason why researchers like Cliff Barackman and Dr. Meldrum believe that Bigfoot could have descended from Paranthropus is because Paranthropus has very similar characteristics to what we know as Bigfoot. A sagittal crest, which means that its head kind of like creates a point at the top. And the reason why a creature would have a sagittal crest is because its chewing muscles would have to be very powerful to be chewing on roots and hard kind of fruits and vegetables and even perhaps meat. So you would have to have very hard, big, thick chewing muscles, which kind of branch up to the top and connect at the top of the head, forming that sagittal crest.
I don't know. Go ahead. I don't see, I never could do well in biology because I really don't like thinking about what's in my body. And it's funny because sagittal crests don't bother me. I learned about them in my physical anthropology class. But now that I'm thinking about it, some humans have a tiny little crest, and you got to think about all the muscle. No.
Well, we were cracking up because during quarantine, when this whole pandemic was at its peak, my father, his hair was getting really long, and he said, I'm going to cut my own hair. So we're like, okay, let's see how that goes. And we laughed hysterically because when he walked out of the bathroom, he had given himself a sagittal crest. He shaved his hair into the shape of a sagittal crest. We were cracking up. We're like, you look like a Bigfoot. But yeah, so Paranthropus had a lot of characteristics that were similar to what we know as Bigfoot today. It looked very primitive, but still human-like, and it walked on 2 legs and also climbed trees. So I think that the theory of Paranthropus is that this creature migrated from Africa all the way up and crossed the land bridge from Asia to the United States. And I believe that it crossed the land bridge alongside what we know today as Native Americans. They started out as, primitive Asian early humans. And so they crossed over, became Native Americans as we know them today. And I believe Bigfoot crossed over at that time as a Paranthropus branch species. So that's what I think. And I think that they've been here a lot longer than, we even have. And I wonder if they even originated in North America. Perhaps they didn't come from Africa. The only reason researchers think that is because most of, all of the human species came from Africa and Asia. So I wonder if maybe Bigfoot is something completely different. Maybe it isn't an ape or a human at all. Maybe it just resembles those things, and it actually was originated in North America. That's something I wonder too.
Yeah, wow, that could be pretty wild if true.
Well, listen, you look at let's just say a horse, right? A horse and a camel, right? They're different, but if you had never seen a camel before and you saw one for the first time, you might think of a horse. It has 4 legs, it has that elongated snout, it has similar type of hair and a tail, but they are not the same species, nor are they related. So what we're doing with Bigfoot is when we see Bigfoot, when eyewitnesses come across Bigfoot and relay that information to everyone else, we're all taking that information and we are comparing that to what we know as humans. What we know is apes and humans. So Bigfoot looks like an ape or a human. So we just think it must be. But perhaps it's a different species and a different type of creature altogether. And that's kind of what interests me about this subject. Maybe it's not what we know at all. Maybe it's something completely different that would rewrite our history entirely.
Yeah. Wild. I didn't even think about that. You really thought about this. Wow, that's crazy.
It's all I think about.
Do you have a favorite Bigfoot book?
That's a great question. I think my favorite Bigfoot book would be Sasquatch Legend Meets Science by Dr. Meldrum. That
I knew
is
you were gonna say that.
Oh, that's it. Come on. It's the classic. It's the best. I think that Dr. Meldrum just does an incredible job of breaking down all of the evidence that we have of Bigfoot and just compiling it into one resource. The language is a little bit difficult to understand. It's very scientific, but if you really read through and try and digest it, I don't think it's that hard for the general public to understand. I mean, it was a little difficult for me at parts, but I would just go on Google and look up the words that he was using, some of them, some of the more scientific words, and then I'd get my explanation. So I do love that book. I think it's a great resource. And I think for anyone starting out in Bigfoot research, that is the first book that you should get. Another series of books that I love are by John Green. He was one of the pioneering researchers of the Bigfoot community, and his books are just fabulous. He makes them extremely easy for everyone to understand. He takes eyewitness accounts and relays them very clearly with an unbiased opinion. You can find the Eighth Canyon incident in his books. You can find the Albert Osman incident in his books, and many others. So I do love John Green's work, and I do turn to that for most of my research. John Green and Dr. Meldrum are definitely my go-tos, but I'm looking to expand into more researchers like Grover Krantz and more of Ivan Sanderson's books as well. So I think anything you can get your hands on from the people who really started this search and this movement, I think that's really the most important thing, because these were the people that were getting accounts that were really unbiased. Nowadays, you get people that make up stories about Bigfoot. You get people that tie it into paranormal, which again is not anything bad. But if you look at people like John Green, Renee DeHinden, Grover Krantz, and Peter Byrne, they were the pioneering researchers. They were getting firsthand information that a lot of people hadn't even told anybody yet. So I think it's important to turn to these researchers first before going on to anything else.
Oh, absolutely. And that's actually one of my favorite episodes of your podcast. It's fairly recent. I can't remember, was it Connor who was on that episode?
Yes.
The four horsemen of Sasquatchery.
Yes.
Yeah, because like you said, they're significant figures. I mean, Peter Byrne, Renee DeHinden, John Green, and Grover Krantz, and yeah, those guys are legends.
They really are. And I think like a lot of people don't really know about them. I mean, I didn't know about them until I watched Sasquatch Odyssey on Amazon Prime. And I definitely, before I read anything, I watched every documentary that was on Amazon Prime, Netflix, on demand. I just watched everything because I think as you watch those things, you learn about different icons in the Bigfoot community, and then you can look up if they have a book. And that's how I started getting into these researchers' work. So actually, I didn't know too much about the researchers. And so Connor and I decided, let's do a podcast on it. We could both do some research, figure out who these guys are, and then we could teach our audience about it. So at the time that we did that podcast, we didn't know much about them either. And we actually both had to do some research on them and learned a lot of new facts.
Yeah, and I'm glad you guys did, because as you said, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of information about them. It seems to be more like if you know about them, you know about them. If you don't, you don't.
Right.
And yeah, you really do have to dig deep. I ordered a bunch of Peter Byrne's books, which are kind of hard to come by, to be honest. A lot of I have some John Green in my room, along with Grover Krantz. I hadn't even realized I had a Grover Krantz book till like a week ago, and
Wow.
I was like, whoa, what? I have this?
Where did this come from?
yeah. So I don't know. I have it. Yeah, it's Renee DeHinden I have yet to get into.
Yeah.
So
That's like me too. I know that Connor does a lot of research into DeHinden's work as well as Krantz. So I've been focusing a lot on John Green and Peter Byrne, and we kind of just exchange ideas and thoughts about it. So that's really cool. I think if there's any takeaway from Bigfoot research, it's to grab a buddy. You know, you could tackle more concepts and more topics that way. Grab a buddy. They read someone else's research. You read a different researcher, and then you guys can share ideas and educate each other. It saves on time, and I think it's a really great way to explore new theories.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. I mean, that's part of what makes Cryptid Campfire so much fun is we all do our individual research on the same cryptid. And
Mhm.
so by the time we come together to record the episode, it's us legitimately having a discussion about, having different research results about certain cryptids. I mean, one of the earliest episodes was a historical mystery, the collapse of the Bronze Age,
Hmm.
which is famously attributed to the Sea Peoples, and that's the biggest mystery is that no one knows who the Sea Peoples are. So, internet conspiracy theories are, oh, they're Atlanteans or they're Mer people, and that's kind of why I suggested it. Turns out the real answer is not that exciting. I mean, it's still very cool. Like, I'm a big history nerd, so I love it. But sadly, no Atlanteans were involved. But we had conflicting research, and I think it almost broke us. Uh, till we realized, well, it's just the Bronze Age, so it doesn't really matter. Uh, so,
That's
so
too funny. Which episode is that? I want to take a listen.
that's like episode 5 or 6. It's
Oh, okay.
the Bronze Age collapse. Yeah. Me and my co-host Jasmine really get kind of tense there for a minute. I just remember I was so scared. I didn't know what was gonna happen, but
That's too funny. Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun to exchange ideas, especially on cryptids. I mean, I think the exciting part about it is like, when you talk about like politics or world issues with somebody, you kind of already know all the facts and there's not too much room for theories or opinions. It's kind of like either you believe one thing or you believe another. But when it comes to cryptids and unknown topics, I think it's just so fun because there the limits to which you can explore are just infinite. You can just think of all kinds of theories, and sometimes you start to connect the dots, and everybody may have different opinions, but eventually you kind of find similarities in each other's theories, and I think it's just so much fun to talk about it. It really is an exciting thing to explore.
oh, absolutely. Um, as you mentioned, you watched every Bigfoot documentary you could find. So,
Almost every.
so what is your favorite Bigfoot movie?
Ooh, that's a good question. My favorite Bigfoot movie is Beast of Whitehall by Small Town Monsters, Seth Breedlove. Seth is awesome. I actually just interviewed a couple of weeks back for his part 2 of On the Trail of Bigfoot series. So I'm really excited to be a part of that. And yeah, Beast of Whitehall was it was such an experience finding that documentary. I was on Amazon Prime and I was just searching along trying to figure out, Bigfoot information. And so I'm looking for documentaries. All of a sudden I see Beast of Whitehall and I think to myself, oh my God, this cannot be. Because Whitehall is a place that I visit every year with my family and I thought no one else knew about it. I
Hmm.
thought it was like before Finding Bigfoot did an episode there, not many people knew about Whitehall and Bigfoot. So
Sure.
to see Seth's documentary, and there was just so much detail. It was an incredible experience. And then every year, Whitehall has a Sasquatch Calling Festival. So I went to be a vendor with my products and to exchange theories and ideas with other researchers. And all of a sudden, I'm standing there, and Brian Goslin and Bill Brand are standing right over there, and I think to myself, oh my gosh, how do I know these guys? I've seen these guys before. And I realized they were from Beast of Whitehall. So it was incredible. I felt like I was meeting my heroes that day because I had no
Nice.
idea that anyone knew about Whitehall, and there's Seth making a documentary there.
Yeah. That's awesome. That is really awesome. I was gonna ask about you interviewing with Seth, and I don't know how much you are allowed to divulge, but how did that go? How did that happen?
Yeah, I could definitely talk about it. Seth gave me full permission. So it was an amazing experience. We met up in Whitehall and he asked me a bunch of different questions about how, my business started and what I love about Whitehall and some local stories. So make sure to tune in for those. And it was an incredible experience. Seth and the team are just awesome, down to earth guys. They are so cool. And, they were doing some research in the area and so were we, so we exchanged some ideas, and I thought it was just so much fun. Like, we're sitting here in this pavilion and Austin is talking to them about football, and then the next second we're talking about Bigfoot, and the next second we're talking about they are just the most relatable, awesome guys, and they really put a lot of work and passion into what they do. So I was just ecstatic to be a part of that. It just so happened that we were doing field research up there while they were filming and doing research as well. So it was a really convenient time to meet up.
Oh,
And it
nice.
was a really great coincidence. So we had a blast with them, and I can't wait for it to come out. I believe it's coming out in March. So I'm
Yeah,
really excited.
something like that. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun, I think. Um, have you ever considered a joint expedition with Pedikov? I know he's in New Hampshire though, so that might
Hmm.
be a little far.
Yeah, I spoke to him a little briefly over email, and we were talking about, our ideas on Bigfoot and maybe linking up for one of his podcasts. I would definitely be open to doing an expedition with any other researcher. I think it's really exciting to have more than one person. I think, there's safety in numbers, but there's also something to be learned from everybody. So I've
Sure.
been thinking of even doing our own expeditions at the Forest Fleur and just inviting some of our researcher friends to come with us and join in on the fun. So that's
Oh,
something that's still in the works and something we're thinking about. But we're just starting to get into field work. What I kind of did was I focused more on the science and history behind this creature for the first couple of years of starting this business, because I really wanted to get a solid understanding of these creatures, the history behind them, who were the major key players and what were their ideas. And now that I feel that I have a good base of that, we started doing some more field work. And Austin is a big environmental guy. He loves fishing and hiking, and he's a big outdoorsman. So he
mm,
has been kind of leading us on this field work and finding really good squatchy spots where, nobody's really around. Some tips that we like to give our listeners on our podcast is like, go on the app All Trails, look for a trail that, maybe doesn't have a lot of stars or a lot of reviews. Maybe it's like a moderate to a hard trail, and just go looking for whatever you can find. Just go out and hike and have fun with it,
yeah,
and along the way just keep an eye out. I think the most amazing thing about Bigfoot field work is that you could just enjoy being outdoors and maybe come across something at the same time. So we've
right.
just started getting into field work. We're taking another trip in a couple of weeks, so I think once we get more seasoned in it, I would definitely collab with a lot of different researchers, including Pedikov.
Oh yeah, right on. Yeah, you should just tell him that he doesn't smile enough in his photos. So he'll know who that's from. Um, uh, what were you saying though? So yeah, I mean, I never understood the big the people who look down on people who go squatching.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, even if you don't find Bigfoot, you're camping outside with your homies, and
Exactly.
that's like if I said I was gonna go camping, you wouldn't say anything. But if it's a camping trip where I'm also looking for Bigfoot, suddenly it's a big deal. It's like, okay, dude, uh, I don't know what to say, but
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's pretty funny. We actually had a big trip planned. We were supposed to go in May with a bunch of our team members and ambassadors that are part of the Forest Fleur. We were supposed to go on a big trip to do some some photography of our products, and then also go out and look for evidence and just kind of stir up some noise and have a good time at this rural Airbnb in the middle of the woods to see if anything would come around. But unfortunately, because of COVID, we had to cancel it. So I think that we'll probably reschedule it. But I was just excited to hang out with our friends. And if something came around, then all the better. But I think the important thing when researching and doing field work is you really can't push it. Like if you're out there looking for something, you can't get trigger happy. You really can't, because then you're going to think that everything you're seeing is a Sasquatch, and likely it's not. It's just the truth. These creatures are extremely elusive. If you're going to find evidence of them, it is likely going to be deep in the woods. There are instances like Cliff Barrickman in his museum in Boring, Oregon, has a mattress pad where a Sasquatch stepped on this mattress pad, and the mattress was on somebody's curb ready to go out for the garbage.
That's
So
right.
that's a possibility, but it is rare. It's probably more common to find footprints in an area like where the Patterson Gimlin film was shot, in the middle of the woods, Bluff Creek, California. So I think that you have to keep a skeptical eye when out doing this stuff, and like you said, just chill out with your friends, have a good time. Like if you want to see a Sasquatch, you're not going to be able to outsmart it. You have to let it come to you, and a big campfire with a bunch of beers and a bunch of friends sitting around singing some tunes on the guitar, that's going to attract a Bigfoot more than any Sasquatch call you're going to try and imitate.
For sure. I think they would definitely know the difference between us imitating them and a legitimate Sasquatch doing it, right?
That's true. It's like when people make fun of my New York accent.
Yeah. I don't know. I get told I have a strange accent all the time, and I'm not sure why. I think I just have the typical Californian accent.
Well, you talk very calmly and very slow. Me, I'm like bada bing, bada boom. You gotta like slow down my audio on your program to make sure people can understand me.
No, it's good. It's good.
I kind of talk a little like a Sasquatch, right? Really fast, non-distinguishable.
Yeah, right. They call
It
it
is.
samurai chatter, right?
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun. I know that's what I need to do is I need to go up into the Sierra Nevadas.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm right here. That's where the Sierra sounds are from.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll see. It's really hard right now due to COVID because
Hmm.
apparently camping isn't social distancing enough. But
Really?
apparently not, because have closed every single campground in this
Wow.
state. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah,
So
that's crazy. I mean, we've been doing some field work, but we've just been like remote camping and just like bringing along a makeshift toilet and like really roughing it. We don't even
yeah,
go into
sure.
the bathhouses. But um yeah, I mean it's a couple of them, a lot of them were closed here. All the state ones were closed here for a while, but they just reopened. So I would imagine though comes the fall they're probably going to close down again. Just because of the possible resurgence. But yeah, you should definitely check out that area though. Actually, yesterday I was doing some research and I came across the Missing 411 documentary on Amazon Prime. I know there's a whole book series. I have not read them yet, but I'm really interested in doing research on that topic. And I'm even trying to get David Paulides onto my podcast. I would really love him to come on.
That would be
But
sick.
he in his documentary, Missing 411 The Hunted, the second one, he actually went up to the spot where Ron Moorhead recorded the Sierra sounds, and they filmed a little bit of the location, and Ron Moorhead kind of talked about what happened, and they replay the sounds. I mean, those sounds are just incredible, and I
Mm,
think they are a very important piece of evidence in the Bigfoot community. A lot of experts have dissected these sounds and looked at the frequencies, and they have proven that the tape was not messed with. This was not formulated by anybody. And this is the real deal. The language is so intricate that if you slow it down, you can actually hear the pronunciations of all the different sounds, which is just unbelievable.
whoa, that is crazy. I didn't hear about that.
Oh, yeah, I'll send you a video on it. It's really good.
Wild. Yeah, please do. Wow. Yeah, I know. It took me. Yeah, that's
Just
crazy.
be careful out there, though. Don't become part of the missing 411 list.
Yeah, I know, right? I get nervous about that. I
Yeah.
really do. I do get freaked out about that. I don't.
Yeah. I
Uh,
I mean, I had never like I've heard of the series before, but I hadn't really researched into it. And after I binged watched both of them yesterday, I was so creeped out. I said to Austin, I'm like, you are never walking 20 feet ahead of me in the woods ever again. We are staying right next to each other. Like we're not separating. I was so creeped out because whether it's Bigfoot abducting these people or aliens or some kind of serial killer that's just really stealthy, whatever it is, and however they're disappearing, there is definitely some kind of phenomenon.
oh, for sure. Yeah, there's something going on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, quick question. Have you seen the overlay with the cave systems in the United States, correlating with the missing 411 disappearances?
No, what is that? Tell me
Yeah.
more.
Uh, I'll see if I can find it. I posted it. I'm gonna cut this out, but I posted it on Cryptid Campfire, and then Polides reached out and was like, "Take it down," and I was like,
Really?
"Oh, yeah, yeah." But
Oh my
uh,
gosh.
it was on his site or something. I don't know. I stole it from someone else. So, but
Mm.
essentially, what it is that it shows all the cave systems in the United States, and it also on the other side it shows all the missing 411 disappearances
Clusters?
in the clusters, yeah, and they coincide like quite a bit.
You're kidding me. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
And
it's really
he didn't want that up on your page?
not specifically mine. No, I think it was a copyright infringement thing. So, but
Mm.
I hadn't known, so I didn't know. I stole it from
Yeah.
someone else.
Oh my
So,
God, I know. I people get so funny over that stuff, you know?
yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, like if people want to share pictures that I post, that's great. Tag me in it. It's great exposure. You know what I mean?
Right. I'm the same.
I
Yeah.
mean, don't
No.
put my trademarked image on products. That would probably annoy me, but
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
but if you want to share something, but I mean, I get it. I guess he wants to keep things private and exclusive to him, but yeah, that's a really creepy phenomena. I'm really excited to like explore that more and either bring him on or another researcher. I even want to maybe bring on Cliff and just see what Cliff's opinion on that whole phenomenon is. So, yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah. Ooh, one more thing. I'm gonna have like a million questions for you, but I promise I'll start wrapping it up.
That's
Uh,
okay.
what do you think about structures? Tree twists, other structures?
Mhm. Yeah, I think tree structures are very compelling. I've been doing some more research into that more recently. I interviewed somebody named Joseph Ringling. He's a researcher, and he does a lot of field work looking for these structures, and he's found a lot of different coincidences wherever he's finding them. He actually found one which really intrigued me. He described it looking almost as if it was like a cradle or a cage for a young Sasquatch, and he
Mm,
found this in the middle of nowhere. So I think that topic is very unexplored. I think a lot of people when they're walking through the woods would never notice a tree snap or a structure if they weren't really looking for one. I just talked to Shane Corson today, and he's going to be on the episode that airs tomorrow. And we actually talked about some structures that the Olympic Project members have been coming across that look like nests, and they're arranged in a specific pattern, and there's a lot of commonalities between them. So that's a really interesting topic that I have not explored myself,
mm,
but I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out in the field. But I did ask Shane, I said, where are you finding these nests and structures? Like, how can I look for them as a field researcher? And he said, well, you're really not going to find them right off the main trail. Like this is something that loggers are going to find because they're going
mm,
into the densest part of the woods and they're tearing down, these trees, and this is area that's unexplored. So you're really not going to find these type of things and this type of evidence in the middle of a populated trail. So you may find a footprint, because Sasquatches may travel that route at night, when people are not on the trail. But I think as far as tree structures and tree snaps, I think maybe that's more something that you may find in the more rural part of the woods. However, I do believe that tree snaps signify something. Now, when you think of an orangutan, their species has dominant males, and they have certain territory that they protect. So if another male infringes on that territory, they will then chase them out. And they have certain ways that they mark that territory. So I think it may be the same for Sasquatch. I think that those tree snaps are either a mark of territory or maybe a trail marker for the next year that they migrate down to kind of figure out where their area was last year.
Mm. Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of really interesting snaps from other researchers. I've never come across any myself, but I've never looked.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you said, though. They're not going to be, or as Shane Corson said, they're not going to be off the main trail. They're going to be deep in there. Again, I'm going to recommend the Bigfoot and Beyond episode with Paul Graves. I don't know if you've listened to that, but highly recommend checking it out. I keep telling everyone to check it out, but he talks about finding structures like that. I mean, I think he lives up in like northern Washington, over by the Cascades, I think. Is that the Cascades?
Yeah,
yeah,
I think I missed that episode. I definitely have to check that out.
Check it out, yeah. And he actually found, he made a cast of a Bigfoot track next to one of these structures.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because Cliff says, "Oh, I would like to see that." And Paul goes, "You have. I gave it to you."
That's hysterical. Well, Cliff has so many footprints. You could probably open a museum just for footprints.
I know, yeah.
That's funny.
My last question before we part ways here is, why did you call it the Forest Fleur?
Oh man, that's a funny question. Okay, so the Forest Fleur, fleur in French means flower. Now, to be completely honest and transparent, I really wanted the name of the business to be the Forest Fleur because that's where you find evidence, like floor, Floor. But unfortunately, that name was taken in the trademarked database.
Oh, that
So
sucked.
my mom had suggested, what about the Forest Fleur? You know, Bigfoot is kind of elevated above the other animals, right? They're all the grass, and Bigfoot is kind of the flower coming up from the ground and enchanting us. So I like to sometimes give people a more romantic answer, but the real truth of the matter is that the Forest Fleur was taken. The name just kind of stuck. The name stuck, and now I'm Emily Fleur.
That's kind of cool, though. I'll be honest, I've thought of Jacques Lafleur from Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh, hey, that's not a bad idea. Maybe I'll go with that next time.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Emily, for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I had so much fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and hopefully I can have you again on sometime in the future.
Yeah, and I'd love to have you on mine if you're ever willing to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hit me up.
Awesome.
Did you want to plug anything before we go?
I'd just say if anyone wants to check out our website, it's www.theforestfleur.com. You can find us on all social medias as @theforestfleur, and our podcast, just search The Forest Fleur on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, and Google Podcast. And Cryptid Campfire, you guys are awesome.
Thank you.
I love your episodes. It's so much fun to listen to.
Oh, thank you. And you guys check out the 4 Horsemen of Sasquatchery because that shit is tight. Sorry, excuse the language, but...
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll pass that on to Connor, too.
Right on. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.